Welcome to the Unstoppable Freedom Podcast. I'm Jimmy Page. Well, it's no secret that America is in the middle of a culture war that's threatening our very existence as a constitutional republic. If you think that's too strong a statement, you simply aren't paying attention. This cultural battle between good and evil is a fight for our collective soul and our very system of government of, by, and for the people. And while the church was instrumental in the American Revolution and once stood as an agent for righteousness and an agent for cultural stability, it's not only largely silent, but in many ways, it's brought the lie of the separation of church and state. They've embraced woke ideology and they've compromised the truth. Well, if that sounds bleak, today's episode is going to give you not only hope, but some concrete steps that you can take to make a difference. Today's guest is an expert in American history, the Constitution, and what it's going to take to restore and keep this American republic that we call the greatest nation on earth. Well, his name is Rick Green, and he's America's Constitution coach and the founder and president of Patriot Academy. He's a former state Texas representative. Don't hold that against him. He's a lawyer and a successful entrepreneur, and his goal is to help America become salt and light in every area of life and to understand America's godly history and foundation. He's the host of an incredible show called The Tavern, which is hosted on the Warrior Poets Society Network. He lives in Dripping Springs, Texas. That's an A+ for this show, with his wife, Cara, and their entire family. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jimmy, it's my pleasure, man. Every word you said in your opening, spot on. And I never know if people are going to hold the being a recovering politician or lawyer against me most, but either one deserves to be held against me. But man, I appreciate the assessment you gave of the country, because we got to know, where the bleeding is in order to stop it and repair the patient. So good stuff.
Yeah,
man.
no doubt. Well, and I got to tell you, so I've been very familiar with Patriot Academy, in particular the program on biblical citizenship. But I first met you when you were serving on a panel at the Turning Point USA America Fest. My son works closely with Charlie Kirk. That was an incredible event, and you were incredibly compelling for your advocacy for our role as citizens in preserving our freedoms. You were a special part of that panel. We had a pastor, we had you, we had a former politician, and we had an entrepreneur. How did you fit on that panel?
It's funny. That's kind of how I asked Kirk Cameron at the beginning of biblical citizenship. Like, why are you here as an actor? What are you doing helping us save the country? It's the same kind of question, right? It's like, every single one of us have a role to play. And, for me, it's almost like being a Paul Revere. My job is to say, listen, we're on the verge of losing the country. Yeah. And there is something we could do about it. So this is not one of those wring our hands. Oh, it's so bad. Look at all these awful politicians, what they're doing. Let's give up and go. No, instead it's bad. Look at what they're doing to us. And we have everything we need to turn it around. Yes. But not if we sit on our rears on the couch and we don't get out there and do something in the culture. So yeah. I guess my job's kind of exhorter, motivator. Yeah. I guess I'm the Zig Ziglar of patriotism. Maybe we'll do it that way.
Oh, I love that. That is fantastic. Dude, that's exactly what it is. And I do think that most people feel this a little demoralized. They feel like they're seeing the culture kind of disintegrate around them. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into the Patriot Academy, before we get into the specifics of the cultural challenges that we're facing, because there are many, I'm really excited that there's something we can do about it, of course. But take us all the way back to the lead up to the revolution in 1776. I'm fascinated by the role of taverns and the church. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And kind of to lead into that, even what you were saying right before this, I grieve, man. The fact that people are demoralized, I understand. I know you do as well. And you talk to people just like I do. I grieve over what's happening to my country. It hurts me to see the literal destruction. The tearing down of what, as you said in your opening, the greatest nation in the history of mankind, the wealthiest, most powerful, most free, most benevolent nation. The way that we tear down America now, even for the good that she has done over the centuries. And so, I completely get that. And I think to some extent, the founders felt a little bit of that. We forget that they were when they rebelled, when they literally declared the causes that impelled them to the separation. They didn't want to separate from the mother country. They considered themselves part of Great Britain. They did not want to have to leave, and they were literally, as the Declaration says, impelled. They were forced to do it, and that's why they list the 27 reasons, and they talk about why this was so wrong and why it was this prince was no longer fitting to lead and to be their leader. And so I think for them it was, and it maybe even kind of a similar. I hadn't thought about it, but as you asked that question, I started thinking about the timeline. Almost a similar kind of timeline. If you go back to the Stamp Act, if you go back to through the mid 1760s, late 1760s, obviously the Boston Massacre in 1770 was really sort of the wake up call for everybody. And then of course the shot heard around the world in 1775. But for them, man, it took that much. I mean, there were some like Sam Adams that were chomping at the bit, right? He was ready to go from the beginning, but there were many others, even John Adams and others that, think about it. John Adams was literally defending the British soldiers from the Boston Massacre. He was their lawyer and saying, we still have to follow the law. We still have to give them a defense. So, I mean, all that rambling to say, I don't think we're that different today than they were in the late 1760s, early 1770s. And if I were to try to pinpoint the moment in time most comparable, I think we are kind of at 72. I don't think we're quite to a 75 or 76 yet. I think there's still a lot of people asleep. The January 6th, the response to January 6th, the gulag in DC, the way we've treated our own citizens, great grandmothers that have been literally had their lives ruined for simply singing hymns and waving an American flag and being at the Capitol that day. Just crazy stuff. Being told that we're a quote unquote threat to democracy, which we are because we're a republic, not a democracy.
Exactly.
But just so many of these different areas where I'm shocked that it's happening on my watch, and I know other Americans are as well. And I think that's where the founding fathers were about 1770.
Well, it's amazing. So I was going to finish our entire time by asking you if is a revolution on the horizon. So maybe you already answered that slightly, maybe not specifically, but in some ways. And I remember 2 years ago, the reason that I got into this fight for freedom was because I saw firsthand what was happening in our public schools here in Colorado, which is an absolute disaster, a disaster of culture, a disaster of bullying opinions, silencing people that don't go along with the prevailing narrative of the media, the state government, all of this nonsense. I actually witnessed my daughter being bullied in class through remote learning. Now, I don't really care that much about bullying, to be honest. I think it can be used in the right hands as, a way to develop resilience and toughness and to understand how to treat people. I get all that. But what bothered me was we are indoctrinating the next generation in an ideology that is against America, that is against freedom, that is against people of faith, and that really is taking us down this Marxist road. And I think that's why I feel like, to go back to your other point, was I feel like people should be meeting in the taverns today. I feel like people should be meeting in the churches today. I feel like this is the 1770s. Talk about why that's so important. I mean, it was part of the foundational part of the revolution.
Yeah, and I apologize. I've totally missed your question. I forgot to come back to your question about the taverns themselves. But you're exactly right. I mean, and that's why I call my show The Tavern and have this set, because it feels like that, right? It's like we almost have to not meet in secret, but almost, that we're like literally gathered in the corner of the tavern, sipping on an ale and saying, what are we going to do, man? How are we going to save the country? I don't want my kids to grow up in tyranny. It feels very much like that. And that goes to your other question about a revolution. My prayer is obviously that we have a peaceful revolution, that we have, thanks to the founding fathers being willing to have a physical, kinetic revolution, we have all the tools at our fingertips in the Constitution and the Declaration and in our legal system, if we use them. Because right now, so much of it's being ignored. The legal system's become a joke. It's not blind justice or equal justice anymore. It's social justice based on Marxism, and that makes everything depend on the color of your skin and which church you go to or don't go to and what party you affiliate with. So that's crazy stuff. And if we don't do this now peacefully, we will end up we're going to end up in civil war. We're going to end up in a physical war. I pray we don't get to that point. And I can't remember if I said this that day on the panel, but I've been saying this a lot lately because I really feel like we're We're just entering the tough times, and everybody's heard about the cycle. Good tough times make for tough men make for good times make for soft men make for tough times. We're at the entrance to the tough times. What we've got right now is bad, but it ain't that bad, not compared to what it could be. It could be a whole lot worse.
Yeah.
And the question is, are these tough times that we're experiencing bad enough that we experience enough pain that we're willing to wake up and short circuit the 1,000 years of darkness that Ronald Reagan used to refer to, or the multiple generations of tyranny before we turn it around, the 70 years of captivity that the children of Israel went into? Yeah, I think we can. I think we can make it a short time, maybe 5 years, 10 years. I don't know how short, but we get involved enough that we turn our country around. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of work, and it can be done. It can be a revolution with ballots, not a revolution with bullets, if we do it now. But we're fast approaching that point where it can no longer be done peacefully. I had Eric Metaxas here in the Tavern. It's actually going to air just this week, but he said something that has stuck with me. I loved his book on Bonhoeffer. His latest is Letter to the American Church. Really, really important book for the country right now. But his point was, listen, Bonhoeffer told everybody in 1933, 34, we're going to run out of time. We've got to do this now. The church has to stand up so that we can peacefully turn this around, or it's going to be too late, and we're going to lose the tools that we need to be able to do it peacefully. And by 1935, it was over. It was too late, and they couldn't do it peacefully.
Unreal.
And man, Eric said that, and I'm like, dude, you're basically saying we could be. Are you saying that America could be down to a year and a half, 2 years? Because I always think it's like 5 years.
Yeah.
Eric's like, he said, no, man. He said, this year, this is it. We have to. And it doesn't necessarily mean win the presidential election, though. That's a huge part of it. But it means wake up, get involved, get educated, start going in and talking to your school board, your city council, and just get off the couch. Citizens have to get up and do something. It's got to be so en masse that the elitist class has to pay attention. Some of them we're going to throw out, right? We're going to defeat them in elections. Some of them will actually turn around and do the right thing because they're politicians, a finger to the wind, whatever's popular. We've got to show them that what's popular is doing the right thing and coming back to the Constitution.
Yeah.
And then some of them, man, we just need to completely get rid of and kick them out of office and get somebody good. Yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I think the revolution question is so important, and it's so critical that we remind everybody that there are peaceable means, that there is a way to save this. Don't act out in frustration. Now, I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I think everybody should be trained to defend themselves. We've got more of a fear. My concern is yes, I'm concerned about my own government, but I'm more concerned about Hamas and the cartels and the 8 million, 10 million that have come across the border, the crime that's increasing, the transgender shooters now in Houston at Joel Osteen's church. That's like the fifth or sixth, we're dealing with a mental illness that where they're giving all these psychotropic drugs and hormone you mix all that into the brain, you're going to have issues like what we're having. So I just say all that not to scare anybody, but just say this is no different than the founder said. You should always be prepared to defend your home, defend your family. So when I say peaceful, that doesn't mean you're not prepared to use violence to stop violence if somebody's breaking into your home. I'm all about that. We train thousands of people to do that. But I do mean politically, make sure we know there are answers to this. There are ways to win this peacefully. So people need to be very wise and cautious about their desire for conflict, because frustration makes you want that, right? Frustration's like, I'm just done with this. Let's go fight. No. We've got to be very smart about how we do that.
That's right. And they're baiting us right now, obviously. I mean, the leftists, the Marxists, they're allowing for societal decay, breakdown, total moral, collapse across the spectrum, including lawlessness that we've never seen before, not in my lifetime for sure. And I think, you speak to this, right? We have to engage, right? And I think part of what I'm doing, and I do think we're down to that 1, 2, 3 year period of time where if we don't stand up and actually do something in our communities to make a difference, we're going to be in big trouble. It will be past that tipping point. But one of the things that I think back then in our original revolution, churches played an instrumental part, right? Pastors back then fearlessly challenged politicians. There was no quote unquote separation of church and state nonsense, at least not the way we interpret it today. They spoke directly to the cultural and moral issues of the day. But more than that, and this is what I'm kind of trying to get our church to say, boy, we need to be part of this. They were active in organizing. They were active in supporting the conversations in their buildings. Now, granted, in those days, they supported the actual literal revolution. Some of them bore arms. I mean, we had the Black Robe Regiment who was, taking up arms and supporting them. But I think we're at the stage now where if the church in mass doesn't start talking about biblical citizenship and inviting people to participate actively in all aspects of government, we're in deep trouble, aren't we?
Huge. We can't. We will not save the country without the churches. I mean, it's just there's just no question about it. You have to have the moral clarity first of all, because if you don't have the moral clarity, you just go to chaos, right? It becomes the French Revolution. We definitely do not want a French Revolution kind of situation where it's just, man, I'm just in this for my rights. I want to do what I want to do, and then it's all about selfishness, and there's no greater good. There's no recognition of the source of freedom. So,
that's right.
The difference. I think George Washington was great at describing this because he did his farewell speech right in the middle of the French Revolution. So he's leaving after 2 terms of being president, saying to the country, okay, here's my advice if you want to keep freedom for the next generation. And he said, religion and morality are indispensable supports of political prosperity.
Yes.
And he's basically saying, in fact, he went on to say, in vain would that man claim the tribute of patriotism that would work to subvert these great pillars. So we all love saying we're patriots. Well, he's basically saying you can't be a patriot if you leave God out of the equation, if you leave religion out of the equation, because then you're going to end up with what he was watching the French get. And he was trying to figure out why the French wanted libertas, man. They wanted what we had, but they were ending up with the guillotine and chaos and mob rule, and whoever had the power was law of the tiger and shark. Well, you take God out of the equation, you take religion out of the equation, you take the church out of the equation, you get law of the tiger and shark. It leads to the French Revolution, which ultimately leads to more tyranny. A lot of people think that the libertarian idea of just everybody do whatever they want and stop trying to have a right or wrong, that leads to freedom. It actually leads to bondage because everybody gets out of control, mob rule, and then the government has to crack down in order to get any sense of society and safety. And so we know that freedom exercised with the respect for the authority of God, religion, and morality leads to political prosperity, meaning the whole culture does better. So you nailed it, man. Without the church, we can't do this. The founders understood that. The pastors in the founding era were so involved. I mean, you go to Lexington, where the shot heard around the world was fired in 1775. April 19th, 1775, it's fired. The night before, where was Paul Revere writing to? He was going to the pastor's house. Why was he going to the pastor's house? Because Jonas Clark was, the church was the epicenter of the community. And guess who's staying at Jonas Clark's house? John Hancock and Sam Adams. Why would they be staying there? Because he's in the middle of all of this stuff. His sermons were planting the seeds for what would ultimately be the shot heard around the world. And he was teaching them just war theory. Why did Captain Parker say that morning, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have war, let it begin here? Because he's saying we don't have the right to be offensive. We can't start the war against the British. It has to be that they attacked us and then we responded. So anyway, I'm rambling again, but I think you're spot on, man. The church has to be the epicenter of the community again. We need to be talking about this in our churches so that it's talked about within that concept of biblical justification for even civil disobedience. We love that quote from the founding fathers where they said rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. I was going up to Chicago when the whole COVID overreaction happened and they're shutting everybody down. And there was this church up there. I don't know if you remember this, those Romanian pastors that, Beetlejuice, I forget her name, the one that looks like Beetlejuice, the mayor there in Chicago, but she said she was going to tear down their church, literally summary abatement, which is we're going to literally brick by brick knock down your church if you don't stop meeting. Now, these guys came out of communism, came from Romania. They're like, bring it on, man. We're here for freedom. I mean, but, and they were doing the social distancing, the mask, the temperature, all the nonsense, trying to comply. But they said, we're not going to not worship God. We're not going to not have church. So I'm going up to Chicago to speak at their church and stand with them in civil disobedience. This is like May of 2020. And I don't know if you know Jim Garlow or not, but Pastor Jim Garlow used to be in San Diego and now he's in D.C. But he I ended up on the phone with him. I think I was interviewing him for something. And I told him, I said, hey, man, I'm going up to Chicago. I'm going to stand with those pastors and a little civil disobedience. And he gave me a good talking to right then about, Rick, that's great. I'm glad you're going. Make sure your heart is right. I was like, and what are you talking about? I'm going to read. He's like, make sure that righteous anger is over a righteous cause. Make sure you're standing for truth and that your heart is right when you go into that battle so that you can be angry and sin not, as the Bible says. And I was like, man, I've been pretty good at being angry and sinning. So maybe, be angry and sin not. I need to remember that. So anyway, I'd say all that because the church is the epicenter and there's something about when we have that patriotism and that rebellion against tyrants from within the church that it's done right. It's not just radical, crazy stuff. It's literally a righteous anger, standing for a righteous cause, and having a rebellion against tyrants that is, in fact, obedience to God.
Yeah, I love that. It has to have the right spirit, right? Because otherwise, as you said, it's going to be chaos. And, if you have eyes to see, that is what they want. They want us to act out of chaos, and they want us to do fire the first shot so that they can clamp down and take more of our freedoms. They've been doing it.
That's right.
They never will waste a crisis. In fact, they will even go so far as to manufacture a crisis. I think another manufactured crisis is on the horizon. We've got the World Economic Forum leaders talking about it. Well, the next pandemic, and which of course we know is all planned. There's so much of this nonsense, but we have to use restraint. It's one of the times in life that you really have to, search your heart, act out of a godly conscience, use restraint, because you're being baited, just like we're being baited in this free speech argument. Let me ask you this, because, the left controls the narrative. In fact, I would go so far as to say the leftists control the narrative. They have so controlled the narrative that even to suggest that we are a Christian nation, that we were founded even upon biblical Christian principles, that whole term Christian nationalist has been so demonized, not only from outside the church, but from inside the church, that so many Christians now are afraid to engage, and it's driving me bonkers. What do you say about that?
Man, well, first of all, the Babylon Bee never misses, and they just did this whole thing. I can't remember how they said it. I think they said 10 signs that you're a Christian nationalist, and it is so funny. It is hilarious, man. It's like, number one, you're a Christian. Yeah. This is a dead giveaway. It's like you have a Bible. You have a flag somewhere in your home or whatever. It's just hilarious, man. It's so good. But you are 100% right, man. And here's what you're right. They're trying to, and it's working with some people. The wimpy part of the church, right? The people that think Jesus sat around petting lambs all the time. Those people that actually think that being nice is being Christian, where the Bible doesn't say anything about being nice. It does say be kind. And so when you speak truth, you can be kind when you do it. But anyway, those people, the left knows that if they can create this term, Christian nationalist or dominionist or whatever new term they come up with, and they associate to that, if you're a Christian and you're involved in politics, that's pretty much it. Yeah. You're now a Christian nationalist. And I'm like, well, I don't even know what a Christian nationalist really means. Right. But all I'm asking for, and everybody I know, like you and everybody in our sphere is simply saying people of faith have just as much a right as anybody else to be involved, and that we should be involved, and we should vote our values. And when our values win the day, if we win actual representative government elections, then our values will be represented in government, and then the culture will be benefit as a result. Sure. Just like Ben Franklin, who was not a Christian, loved the Christian religion because it produced good citizens. Yeah. So just imagine this, Jimmy. This is crazy. I know this sounds crazy, but what if a culture actually reinforced the idea that we should treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated? Yeah. I mean, wow, that's a radical idea. I think that comes from a book called the Bible, which makes it a Christian value, but it literally makes for a nice neighborhood. Yeah. Now I'm treating my neighbor the way, I mean, that's all we're talking about doing, is literally treating our neighbors the way we want to be treated. And actually saying some things are wrong. I kind of think murder is a bad idea. I'm all for outlawing murder. Well, guess where that comes from? Thou shalt not murder. I think stealing's a bad idea. Thou shalt not steal. I think if you lie and you defraud people and you're deceitful, then you should be held accountable for that. All of that those are Christian values. And so, I think we have to be willing to defend our faith. And I think we have to be careful not to adopt their language, right? Like some of my friends, man, they're out there going, "Yes, I'm a Christian nationalist." And I'm like, I don't want to give them that toy. I don't want to give them that fodder to play with. Yes. But at the same time, I always ask them, well, it depends on what you mean by the word. Yes. If you think that I want to have a theocracy, absolutely not. I'm not for that. I don't know I know not a single person that wants a theocracy. No, but all of us simply want the same voice as anybody else. Yeah, and we don't want a democracy. We don't want mob. Right. And I think that's part. We want a republic. Absolutely. Republic. And I think that's part of this conversation, right? And I'm this spring, late spring, I've got a book out called Kingdom Patriots. It's essentially nice. I like the title.
Yeah, it's taking back this idea that you can be fully aligned under your faith in God, in this particular case, in Christ and Christ alone.
Amen.
That there's nothing, not policy, not politics, none of it, not preference that takes, that's above that. But at the same time, you can love your country and you can fight for the ideals and the ideas that we're founded on and not demonize it and destroy it, but instead build it up and unify it.
It's very much, man, that you mentioned separation of church and state earlier. The proper use of that term even is that we don't have a national denomination that is running our government, and we don't have a government that is running our church, right?
Yeah.
We want that separation.
Yes.
But the idea that we're going to separate our faith or that we're not going to have a freedom of religion, that's why the Constitution doesn't say separation of church and state. It says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of a religion, meaning like making a national denomination or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. I want Muslims to be able to influence the culture with what they believe. I want Buddhist and Hindu and atheist and everybody gets a vote. You get to whatever your values are. And what you and I are saying is Christians should do the same thing. And we don't give up any part of our citizenship because we're Christians. In fact, we're commanded in the Bible to occupy till he returns, to be good, faithful stewards with what we've been given, to treat our neighbors the way we want to be treated, to do justice, all of those things. It's really like a double whammy expectation. Not only do you owe it to the patriots that died for you in previous generations so you could be free, but you also owe it as a Christian. You're, as Charles Finney said, you're to do your duty to your country as a part of your duty to God. God will bless or curse the nation according to the course Christians take in politics. He said that because he knows if you and I are active, if other Christians are active, it's going to be a blessing to our neighbors, no matter what their religion is, and a blessing to the world.
That's right. And God designed government, right? So God designed government to punish evil and to promote the good and to create a culture, an environment for human flourishing, where we can accomplish everything we're made to be, where we can become our greatest expression of ourselves, which as a believer would be a reflection of Christ in us. This is what God designed government for, and he designed the church. And what I mean by that is believers, people who trust God above politics. He created us to be the conscience of government, to be the ones that inform government and constrain government so it doesn't become a group of tyrants, which we currently have right now.
That's right.
What do you...
take that to a basic level, Jimmy, real quick. Just take that to a basic level. If a person is not a Christian or they don't allow their Christian values to influence what they believe, why wouldn't they use government money for themselves?
Right.
Why wouldn't they cheat in an election to get what they want? Like without any concept of right and wrong, of course the country is going to get worse and worse, and you're going to have presidents that take $5 million bribes in order to make things happen in Ukraine and everywhere else. That's just natural law, man. That's the nature of man that goes that direction. We should want more Christians to be involved and expressing their faith and living out their faith in order to have as little of that stuff as possible. Not to say that Christians are perfect. We sin as well. But our rules say that we should repent of that sin and not do it again.
Yes.
And that's good for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm going to be held accountable to a higher authority than myself, than government, than anything else. So I feel this obligation to live my best and also to love God and love my neighbor, like you said, love others as I love God. I think this whole prospect, and this is why I love what you're doing, because you're giving people specific things that they can do. Let's talk a little bit about Patriot Academy. It's too important to miss this.
Yeah.
You've got 4 specific areas that we talk about. I want to start with biblical citizenship, because that course, that offering is so instrumental in changing people's ideas about what they should be doing in our culture, their level of participation. Talk a little bit about biblical citizenship.
Sure. Yeah, man. Everything we do at Patriot Academy is teaching citizens to live out their freedom. That's essentially, we're empowering people to do their duty under the Constitution and be good citizens and good neighbors. So biblical citizenship is specifically for the faith community to say, what does the Bible say about citizenship, how to treat your neighbor, and then how do you do that properly under our Constitution? So it's a combination of biblical worldview and constitutional literacy so that we do this peacefully and rightfully, do our duty under the Constitution. And bro, it's become, man, that thing has become so popular because people were hungry for that.
Yes.
Every denomination you can think of, that class is being held in every kind of church you can think of. In every restaurant you can think of, in people's homes, Harley Davidson dealerships, bait and tackle shops. I had a guy tell me the other day he was holding it in his funeral home.
Hey, wait a minute.
I'm like, what?
If there's one at the Harley dealership, you need to give that location So if we
That's
can
right.
make it, we'll make it, you know?
Amen. It's wild, man. It's wild. People are hungry. And I'm telling you, people are coming that of all faiths, people of no faith. Pastor in Connecticut told me he had a guy show up at his class and he said, man, I'm an atheist. I don't agree with any of your faith stuff. But he said, I know the left hates you and I hate the left. That means we ought to be working together. And so fourth week of the class, the guy gives his life to Christ and ends up getting baptized by the end of the class. So be warned if,
You warned him is right, but the truth comes out, right? And I think that's why what I love about it is it's not dependent upon the church leadership, the pastors buying in. It really is led by people in the pews. Yeah. And so what I love, this is an opportunity to lead up. If you're dissatisfied with the way your leadership of your church, your pastors are not speaking to the cultural, moral, even political issues of the day, bring in biblical citizenship, get 200 people in your congregation going through it. And believe me, before long, those pastors are going to be talking about the issues that matter to you.
Amen, brother. They'll hear about it. You can start doing it in your living room. If the church won't, or if the pastor won't endorse it or smile on it, and announce it from the pulpit and all that. First of all, consider going to another church, but, be salt and light within your own church if necessary. First, try to wake them up. And what you just said happens all the time, man. The pastor will start hearing about, I heard 10 people were doing it and then 20 and then 200. And, they're like, I need to know what's going on and get into this thing. And we've got a page on our website at biblicalcitizens.com where pastors can watch videos of other pastors talking about having it in their class. At their church. So that's a great one to send to your pastor. Because, I get it. Listen, if I was a pastor, everybody's got a new class coming out or a Bible study they want you to do, and everybody's hammering you all the time to try to do something new. Yeah. So I understand the pressure they're under. And sometimes it's not that they don't want to be quote unquote political. They understand the gospel applies to everything. It's they're just overwhelmed and they haven't seen the class. So they don't know what, they don't know if it's some crazy stuff or if it's actually biblical. So I get that. And what you're saying works great if you do it in your home or get the fellowship hall or whatever and get people excited. The pastor will hear about it. If you've got a good relationship with your pastor, though, literally get them the little thumb drive or send them the link. Well, they can watch the class for free. And when they see Kirk Cameron and David Barton and Rabbi Daniel Lappin and all these people in there, they generally will then say, okay, wait, I'm going to pay attention to what's going on.
That's right. Well, and they're going to realize that there are people in their church who want this. I think that's part of this is like, hey, wait a minute. We believe in this nation. We believe in the founding values. And this is the type of coursework that engages the people that are coming to my church. It gives them, sometimes they just need somebody to stand up, encourage so that they can stand up with courage.
That's right.
And I think that
you raise the banner, they'll rally.
Yes,
and you hit a really important point. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just got to hit this one. There are people in the church that don't know what to do right
That's right.
now, right? So the flock is hungry for biblical application to the chaos that they're watching in the culture. Yeah. They don't want to just have to go try to navigate those waters without biblical instruction. And granted, we should all read the Bible ourselves, and that's what we teach in the classes, get saturated in God's word if you want to save the country. But most people aren't. 91% of Christians don't read the Bible on a regular basis. So the church is supposed to provide some instruction and some direction. Man, if you don't have anything going in your church that's speaking to the chaos that's going on right now, people in your congregation are hungry and they're looking for answers. And this class really helps them go get in the right direction.
Yeah, it does. And so you've got other things, and I want to touch on them real quick. Got this constitutional defense, which, by the way, it's actually speaking my love language. I gotta tell you. So you've got the classwork, the knowledge, and then you got the firearms training. So I'm like, for me, this is like a home run. This is a no-brainer. Why didn't we think of this a long time ago? Tell us a little bit about the constitutional defense class.
It is a magical combination, man. It's so fun, first of all, because you get to shoot guns all day and learn how to do proper self-defense and then also study the Constitution. So it's intellectual and physical at the same time. Most conservatives, they got the Second Amendment bumper sticker, but they've never been trained. I was that guy, man. I was the God and Guns guy in the Texas legislature. I'm literally passing all the NRA legislation. Charlton Heston does an ad for me talking about what a patriot I am. and I don't carry my gun
Yes.
because I wasn't trained. You know, I grew up on the ranch, but I had never had any real training.
Amazing.
And so finally, about 12 years ago, somebody put me through one of these classes. And it changed my life completely, and made me so much more aware of what's going on.
Yes.
4 million violent crimes a year, and that was 8 years ago. It's a lot worse now. You know, it's just, I was the fool, to be honest, Jimmy. You look at Proverbs 27:12. It says, "The righteous or the wise person foresees danger and takes precaution. The simpleton or the fool walks blindly on and suffers the consequences." I was the fool for the first 40 years of my life. And then I finally, when I went through this class, I went, wow, man, I want my boys to be trained. I want my wife and my daughter to be trained. I want to be better trained. So we started doing it all the time, like 3 or 4 times a year. We go through a training.
Amazing.
And then I started taking churches and other people out there. I got a passion for it. There were a couple of mass murder events in Texas that where the dirt bag is literally walking aisle by aisle shooting people, and there's no one there. There's no sheepdog anywhere to stop the chaos, and it takes 5, 10, 12 minutes for the police to get there. I said, what? I mean, that's such a waste of life. If we had a sheepdog in every church, every restaurant, every school, every grocery store, you would stop that nonsense right off the bat and save lives. And so we got passionate about it. We put about 5,000, 6,000 people through the class now. We just built our own facility in Fredericksburg, Texas. So we've got our own ranges and classroom, and I got the best instructors on the planet. 55% of our students are women. 45% are guys that get drugged there by their wives because their wives are saying, you need to learn how to do this, because all the guys don't think they need it, right? And then we have a lot of people that never touched a gun in their life. And then we have SWAT officers that come and train and say it's the best training they ever had. So it's good, man. I'm telling you, it's fun, it's entertaining, and you'll go home ready to defend your family. God forbid the wolf shows up at your house or your restaurant or wherever you are, but you'll be ready if they do.
Brother, let me tell you, I'm coming down. I might take it twice. I mean, I might move to Fredericksburg.
Come on.
I mean,
come on, brother. Come on. You can do your show at my studio in Fredericksburg.
I'm ready to go, man. I'm telling you that. Well, when I moved to Colorado, I moved from the Communist Republic of Maryland, where they had very tough gun laws.
Oh, man, it's so bad there.
It's horrible. And it's not the gun laws. They're stripping your ability to defend yourself and to protect loved ones. That's what this is. This has nothing to do with guns.
Amen.
And so, but in Colorado, of course, we have laws that in many ways are better for it. But I started to get trained, started to get serious about this. For the first 6 months, I only carried when I felt like I was in challenging or maybe some rough circumstances, until someone challenged me and said, wait a minute, you realize that most of the problems happen when you least expect it in your everyday travels, whether you're in the Walmart parking lot or you're going to the grocery store. That's when you need to be able to defend yourself and others. So now I carry, I'm in my house and I'm carrying. So just,
good for you, brother. Good for I used to lie to myself with that too. I'd be like, oh, it's not going to happen in Drippy Springs. It won't happen at my HEB or my wall. That's exactly where it happens. Because, bro, you're wise. You're very wise.
Yes. So, all right, let's move on, because we're going to send people to sign up for that course. And I know it's going to be the ladies driving the men there. I got that. Number 3, Leadership Congress. This is a big deal, right? I mean, this is kind of like the premier training ground for young American patriots. Tell us a little bit about that, because we've got a lot of people that have young adults that this might be perfect for.
Well, and the good news is now it's for everybody. And so it started, this was our flagship program. This is how we got started back when I was a legislator in Texas 25 years ago. Leadership Congress was birthed out of my frustration that there were so few conservatives. I mean, this is in Texas, right?
Amazing.
Very few people voting out of conviction or any kind of a plumb line of right and wrong and good principles. And so we started this to train 16 to 25-year-olds at the state capitol. So they're on the real House floor in the real committee rooms. We take them through a legislative simulation. They learn how a republic really does work. And then at the same time, we're teaching them communication skills, media skills, constitutional literacy. They're learning how to measure things. We have a acronym we call LIFT, Limited Government, Individual Liberties, Free Enterprise, Timeless Truths. We teach them how to measure every bill or every idea with that paradigm. And I'm telling you, man, we've got 3,500 grads out there from this particular program in Congress, state legislatures across the country, school boards, city councils, you name it, judges, all over the place. And it's really produced some great results. And so now we do it not just for those 16 to 25-year-olds. We have a military veterans, Patriot Academy Leadership Congress. That one is so cool, man. Every time at the end, those veterans are coming up saying, Rick, now I know what I was fighting for. It's really, really special.
Yes.
And then our Constitution coaches of all ages have one as well. And so, that's a great program for really experiencing how your government works. Even if you don't ever want to run for office, it's not for people. I mean, people that want to run for office should do it. But maybe 10% of our graduates actually go run for office. Most people, it's just to be a good citizen.
Yeah.
I promise you will sit down with your legislator and be able to have a much better conversation about whatever it is that you're trying to convince them to vote for if you've been through this, because it helps you to understand how difficult the process is. What are the steps in the process? It really has made a big difference, and it's growing like crazy. So that one's all of these are at our website, patriotacademy.com. But Leadership Congress, that's our flagship, man. That's the first one we did.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. But the other thing I love about it now that it's expanded, especially into the military community, even in my business world, I've got partnerships with former Navy SEALs, partly because once they get out, they want to have that next mission. They've been mission driven for so long.
That's it.
What a better way than to prepare them either to run for office or to, defend freedom in their local community now that they're not fighting for it overseas or in another environment. So,
that's exactly what we tell them too. Come find your next mission.
Yeah.
That's literally, and it's so cool, man. It is so cool to watch them. Just the epiphany that they have during that week when they're either on the floor debating or in one of the workshops or whatever. You just see the light bulb come on and they're like, wow, there's still other ways I can serve my country right here in my community. And it's the next mission, and it's doing it right here domestically, just standing up as a citizen now. For the very same things they were willing to die for before.
Amazing. Well, listen, I love what you're doing. I love Patriot Academy. I love all of this. I'm going to come down for the classes. We're going to tell our whole community of listeners all the ways they can engage with you guys. As we close, give us some hope, give us some encouragement. Tell us how we can engage, leave us with something positive.
Well, let me start the positive message by saying it's not going to be easy. There are some ugly days ahead of us. It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Nothing compared to what I think even the founders had to go through or what most people in history have gone through. I mean, we have so much freedom and we have it so good that we forget the contrast to what most people go through in their life. The billions of people that have lived on the planet never got to choose their leaders, never got to choose what they wanted to buy or sell or have a free enterprise or any of those things. So we have a significant amount of freedom that most people never enjoyed. I'll say this, man, I'm spoiled. I get to see, almost every night I'm somewhere in the country, somewhere different with a different group of, 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people that are like you and me. So I know for a fact that we're not alone. I see it all the time. We've got 27,000 Constitution coaches now hosting classes all over the nation and communities with 5 people in their living room or 500 at a church or whatever it might be. So there is there's millions of people that have awakened.
Yes.
And what that says to me is that like we were saying earlier, that beginning of the tough times, it is awakening people. Mm-hmm. The stuff you and I are talking about 5 years ago, man, I mean, I've been doing this 30 years. And to see the difference 5 years ago, most people's eyes were glazing over. They were bored to death.
Yeah.
Now, man, they're on the edge of their seat going, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I'm in, man. Show me what to do. So that's a really exciting time to be alive. I think Ronald Reagan said it best. I'm glad I don't live in pale and timid times. I'm glad to live at a time where what we're doing is making a difference. I mean, we live at a beautiful moment in history, an inflection point in history where what we do could either push this thing back into liberty or by not doing anything, we're going to watch this all fall into tyranny. So I see that as an exciting time to be alive. We get to make a big difference. So millions out there doing that.
Yes.
I know what we're doing works. I've seen what happens when somebody has one of our Constitution classes in their community and the excitement after 7,000 classes. We know it works. We know what happens. So I just say to all of your viewers out there, don't sit on the sideline. You're not alone. I understand grieving for the country. Like I said, I do that. I understand sometimes you get down because you look at all the bad stuff that's going on, but realize that you're not alone. There is a way to get out of this, and you have a role to play in it. And we'd love to come alongside you and equip you. And we're kind of like the ammunition providers, the intellectual ammunition providers. We would love to equip you with that intellectual ammunition. And as Jimmy said, come on down and do the class with us as well, and spend a week with us in Fredericksburg. I promise you'll go home encouraged and motivated to do your part.
And prepared. Hey, with that note, let's go back. Let's keep fighting for freedom. Rick, you're the best. Thanks so much, my friend. God bless you. We're going to be praying for you and sending people to your.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Jimmy. Enjoyed it, man. Have a good one.
Thanks.